Hey, my name is River Ford, and I get to do this project on the ontological argument. Before reading about the ontological argument, I have never heard of it before. Um, but while we've been, kind of going through this book and researching a bunch of different arguments and stuff, as I dove into this one, it seems to be a very fascinating idea that I have never even once contemplated. It originated in the 11th century AD by Anselm of Canterbury, and he brought up this idea or this argument that the ontological argument that if God, the greatest highest being that could exist, if it was possible that God, the greatest highest being, could exist, then theoretically in all of the infinite amount of worlds that there could be or are, then God exists. And the argument is this: it's that, if God could exist, if it was possible that he could exist and he was all powerful, all knowing, and he was perfectly moral, then if he can, he does. Because if you had 100 different worlds and he existed in just one of them, then by definition, by being all powerful, all knowing, he would exist in every single world. So it wouldn't be that he's like confined to just one world in and of himself, because he's outside of just the one world limitations. Whereas if you were to compare this to saying, like, what if we took the greatest, most all-powerful knowing pizza, then this is an argument that is not qualified to withstand the reasoning behind the all-knowing God. Because if you have a pizza and you have it in one, let's say you have it in one, and it's possible that a all-knowing, perfectly moral, all-powerful pizza can exist, then it's not necessarily a being. And so it really, first of all, it would serve no purpose, but second of all, even if it were to exist in all of these different type of worlds, it wouldn't be true. Because how do you define the greatest pizza? Is it thin crust? Is it thick crust? Is it extra cheese, less cheese, no pepperoni, all meat? Like what do you put on it? And so it's kind of subjective to the eater. Whereas then if there's an all-powerful, all-knowing, perfectly moral God in any type of world or fantasy, God will ultimately be the perfect standard. Whereas if you have a pizza, the perfect standard is not the same for every single person. Whereas then some people may not be able to eat a pizza. So it wouldn't technically be the greatest pizza of all time, or, in all creation, because it theoretically would not be true. Whereas then if the all-knowing, etc., God exists, then he kind of subjects everything to him, as in he would be objectively perfectly moral, all-knowing, and all-powerful, and that would be completely true to everything, because of him being the greatest and highest being, he would subject everything to himself instead of just an inanimate object like a pizza. And some arguments to this is that it's circular reasoning, that it's just you're saying that he's all powerful and stuff, so it's just going back into proving that that because he's all powerful, it just fits back into the theory, and it just continues to circle. The other thing is that another like limit or argument or weakness or whatever is that the only reason it works is because you use God, the name God, as like the highest, greatest being, in which is it isn't like the worst argument I've ever heard, but it's all right. And then the other one is um, kind of like the thing with the pizza. Like you could say like the greatest island, the greatest highest island that there is, and if it existed in one world, theoretically it would exist in all worlds. But back to the pizza analogy, it isn't a conscious being that would reign and be above. It's an inanimate object that is not and cannot be alive. And then the last thing is that when and how I would use this argument, I probably never would just bring it up to somebody because it's really hard to explain. And then it's also, I don't think it's very good for a gospel or like an altar call or anything. Whereas if, I was in a philosophical debate with somebody, and I was like, like a conference doing this or something, I might bring it up, but in all honesty, I could not see myself bringing this up to anyone or anywhere other than like a philosophical argument with like Alex O'Connor or, I know he's passed on now, but someone like Christopher Hitchens or Richard Dawkins or something. Because if I tried to explain this to like my fiance, she would look at me like I was stupid. So I think that's it. And so thank you. God bless.